Aloha e komo mai, and welcome aboard. Welcome to this week's edition of the Just Cruisin' podcast. It's being recorded on Thursday morning, October 8th, 2020. I'm Larry Jackson, owner of Cruise Holidays of Viera, and I'll be your cruise director for this week's edition of our hopefully weekly podcast called Just Cruisin'. And the title of this week's broadcast or podcast is entitled Two Steps Backwards. Well, last week when I recorded our podcast, I was very, very hopeful that we had made great progress towards reopening cruising. We had submitted our plan to the CDC from the Healthy Sail panel that Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Lines have been collaborating on for many, many months. We submitted 74 protocols in a 66-page document. The CLIA, Cruise Lines International Association, had adopted a series of mandatory protocols for cruise lines that were being presented to the CDC. This no sail order was set to expire on September 30th. And so we were very, very hopeful that we could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel and at least get a date of when we might be able to begin cruising again in North America. Well, right after I did that, our hopes got dashed some more. After spending September 30th with no word from the CDC, the next day they then decided to extend the no-sail order to basically match what the cruise lines had already done in their voluntary suspension through October 31st. So they extended the CDC extended their no-sail order until October 31st. Okay, that's fine. Then we also had announced that there was going to be a meeting on that Friday, October 2nd, and that would occur at the White House with Vice President Pence, members of the Coronavirus Task Force, the CDC, and different government agencies. Well, unfortunately, the president was diagnosed or had a positive COVID test, was then taken to the hospital, and that basically did away with our meeting with the CDC, with hopefully getting some sort of date coming forward. So now it appears that we're not going to have that meeting until at least after the elections on November 3rd. So we're basically back in limbo. Then to make things worse, this week, beginning on Monday, actually on Friday, Carnival announced that they were going, Carnival Cruises, not the Carnival Overall Corporation. Remember, we have to talk about two different Carnival entities. There's the Carnival Overall Corporation, which includes the other cruise lines such as Princess, Holland America, etc. And then there's Carnival Cruises, which is basically the 27 or whatever ships with the big red flute that you're used to seeing. Anyway, Carnival Cruises announces that they were going to suspend all sailings through the end of December of 2020 from the United States, except they were not canceling cruises from Miami and Port Canaveral. However, if you had cruises from those, you could still cancel them yourself and get a future cruise credit and all the provisions that we're seeing from canceled cruises. They basically left the door open that if we got rid of the no-sail order, they could be able to start very expeditiously from here in Florida, which we have all been surmising was probably going to will be the first cruises to happen. Will be short cruises from here at one of our major Florida ports, which would be Port Canaveral or Miami or possibly Fort Lauderdale, but the Fort Lauderdale is not really set up for short-term cruises. So that was another blow. Then on Tuesday of this week being the week of October 8th, Royal Caribbean announced that they're extending their voluntary suspension through November 30th. So they canceled all November cruises. In addition to that, Azamara Cruise Lines, which is the small ship arm of Royal Caribbean, the Overall Corporation, again, one of our favorite cruise lines. They sail the R4 680 passenger Renaissance ships that we like so much, they announced that they would not be starting operations again until at least April of 2021, through suspending all of their operations through March of 2021. Now, Azamara's schedule during that time frame would basically be in the Caribbean and then be moving to Europe in sometime in February, April, March, April time frame. But anyway, that was not good news. Also, Seabourn announced that they would not be starting up cruising again until at least January of 2021. So basically our hopes all got dashed that we would be able to start some sort of cruising basically in 2021. It's fading more and more that we're not even going to get our short-term cruises by the end of 2020, and that it's looking more and more like January to start our short-term cruises, and then everything gets pushed back from there. Before I forget, I want to remind you that this podcast, Just Cruising, is brought to you each week by Cruise Holidays of Viera. We are a boutique travel planning store. Hey, we had 2 bookings this week, so we were really thrilled. Things have been a bit slow. We've been working every time one of these suspensions happens. We then go out and act as advocates for our clients. We make sure that they get their future cruise certificates if that's what they want, or if they want to get a redemption and a refund of their cruise if that's an eligible option. We go to bat for all of them. By the way, we're just now getting some refunds for some cruises that were canceled back in May cruises. So we continue to work all week long on. Still, we have not gotten all of our money that our clients are entitled to, and we have become their advocates. The reason I bring all of this up is when cruising and travel does resume, we hope that you'll think about us at Cruise Holidays of Viera. We are a small boutique vacation planning store. We're located in Melbourne, Florida, very near Port Canaveral. And we're available to you 24/7 on our website, which is just Cruisin' Viera, Cruisin' with no G, Viera, Viera. Or you can just Google Cruise Holidays of Viera. We have a very good website that's maintained with all kinds of great information about cruising, about travel, about things like passports, visas, all of that sort of thing. And we'll be having more and more information about, of course, COVID as we reestablish and restart our cruising and travel plans. But it's not too early to start looking at making your travel plans for 2021. And we hope that you will consider us. We would like to be your advocate and your advisor for this upcoming year in 2021. You can reach us at our phone number of 321-242-1331. And we appreciate very much you listening to our podcast and hope you find them helpful. All right, so we had all of these cancellations, suspensions, move backs, and everything else, and it just delayed us again. So what's going on? What can we look forward to in the future? And I'm going to share with you several articles, which I think I'm trying to give you an idea of the tenor or the flavor of what we're going to be experiencing in the next couple of months as we still work on trying to get restarted. Last week I read you an editorial or an article by a lady whose name is Johanna Jane Chill. She writes for Travel Weekly magazine, which is basically an industry publication that we get. But she's been very, very good on assessing the atmosphere and what's going on kind of behind the scenes and looking at all the different issues. So I want to read you some of her article from the October 5th Travel Weekly edition. And the name of her article is Playing Political Football with Cruising's Restart, which is one of my favorite themes. She starts out, it should probably come as no surprise that during one of the most politically charged climates in recent memory, the decision over whether or not to allow cruising to resume has become a political football. The CDC has extended its cruise ship no-sail order by one more month, but apparently the relatively short extension was because the White House would not allow CDC Director Robert Redfield to extend it as far as he wanted to through February of 2021. Redfield was overruled, a report from the news site Axios claimed. Now, again, Axios is a fake media site. It's a very liberal site, so I'm still taking all of that with a grain of salt. I'm not assuming that this is the complete truth, that Redfield wanted to suspend cruising through February. And again, if he did, it makes no sense because he has no basis for doing that. This is me talking again. I'm not talking about the editorial anymore. One of the problems we're having with the CDC is this lack of dialogue. They will not come back and say, okay, your protocols are terrible. Go back to the drawing board and come back with a new set of protocols. Or we like some of these protocols, we don't like these other protocols. Or we don't like anything that you've submitted to us, and so submit something else, okay? That would be a very refreshing state if we just got some word from them. But all we get are extensions of the no-sale order with no comment as to what we're supposed to be doing. That really leaves us in limbo, the cruise industry I'm talking about, the travel advisors, everybody leaves us all in limbo. And it's this uncertainty that is basically killing us, because if we just had a date, if we had a set of protocols, we could all work towards that goal. Right now, we are just in no man's land. All right, I'm going to go back to our article. Again, I don't know whether Redfield actually lobbied to have the cruise industry shut down through February and that the White House overruled that or strong-armed him. I don't know. That's what's being reported by the liberal media. All right. Axios claimed in part, this happened in part because the cruise industry is a major economic driver in Florida, a key battleground state. Okay, well, yes. We are here in Florida. Cruising is very important to our economy, which is all the more reason to let it restart. Not because we're a battleground state, but just because we have an economy that's flat on its rear end because the CDC will not give us any guidance as to what they want us to do. All right, back to Johanna's article. Less than 2 weeks ahead of the meeting where Redfield was allegedly thwarted, Florida's two Republican senators, Rick Scott and Marco Rubio, stepped up pressure on the government to end the no-sale order by introducing the Set Sail Safety Act, aimed at accelerating the cruise industry's return to service. And this was the bill that I referenced last week that really created more bureaucracy than just trying to get the CDC to reopen cruising, because they wanted all these different agencies to come together, such as Homeland Security, the Customs and Border Patrol people, the Coast Guard, and come up with a plan from all these different agencies. Well, that's sort of like how the camel got invented. It was invented by a committee, and I think that would have done more harm. So far, I can't find anything where the bill is progressing in Congress, so I'm not sure it's really a factor. Okay, back to the article. Johanna continues, but last week, Congresswoman Doris Matsui, a Democrat from California, sent a press release with the headline, Matsui demands CDC explain dangerous modification to cruise ship order. In a letter to Redfield, the head of the CDC, Matsui said the 1-month extension represents, quote, an alarming departure from previous Centers for Disease Control and Prevention policy for cruise ships. I don't know how she can say that. And I'm concerned it may threaten public health. How is it a departure? It just says we can't sail. Creating new opportunities for COVID-19 to spread before the virus is contained could lead to additional loss of human life and significantly delay the economic recovery. Well, I'm sure glad a Democrat is happy about is anxious to get the economic recovery going. Back to the article. The language in the latest CDC's no-sale order extension hardly pulled punches. While the extension is only for 1 month, the order's language does not indicate the CDC is convinced the industry is ready. For example, it said that there is current evidence that cruise ship travel continues to transmit and amplify the spread of COVID-19. Now, the CDC doesn't tell us what evidence there is. Even when ships sail at reduced passenger capacities and would likely spread the infection into U.S. communities if passenger operators were to resume prematurely in the United States. I don't know how they can say that. We are sailing in Europe. We have had no outbreaks of COVID-19 on 2 different cruise lines that have been sailing for well over 4 weeks now. And how they can say that current evidence that cruise ship travel continues to transmit and amplify, that's patently false. There's no evidence to that fact. They don't cite any examples in their communique. And I don't know how it would transmit in the United States, because all you're doing in the United States is getting on a ship, and then you get off the ship at the same port. I don't know how that spreads it throughout the United States. Okay, and Johanna continues. And while the cruise industry has been touting the return of cruising in Europe as evidence of the industry can safely resume here with the proper protocols in place, the CDC seemed to view those examples differently, saying, recent passenger voyages in foreign countries continue to have outbreaks. Name one. We have had no outbreaks. The only thing we have had were there were 3 ships at the very beginning, way back in the early part of June. Those ships stopped sailing. Several of the ships, there were false positives, which caused them to stop sailing, but there were definitely no outbreaks. The CDC continued despite cruise ship operators having extensive health and safety protocols to prevent the transmission of COVID-19 on board and spread to communities where passengers disembark. Absolutely no evidence. Cite that evidence to me, CDC. I've not seen anything that indicates it. To continue with the article, ASTA, that's the American Society of Travel Agencies, CEO Zane Kirby Friday left partisan politics out of his criticism of the CDC when ASTA threatened to sue the federal government over the no-sail order. The society called its continuation negligent and wrongful and said it has resulted in extreme economic injury to the travel industry. And that's putting it mildly. This is from ASTA continues. This action that they're taking is besmirching the reputation of the cruise lines. It's not allowing them to have the same opportunity that other businesses have in order to safely return people to the seas. It's completely an unacceptable position. There's nothing left to do except to put them under the microscope. Between ASTA's threat and Matsui's letter, one thing is clear. Whether it's because they think it's treated with kid gloves or it's treated unfairly, people are starting to wonder what is motivating the CDC's attitude toward the cruise industry. Here's hoping we will get some clarity. Well, I think we've gotten some clarity because there's another article that I came across out of San Francisco, and here's the headline of it. Trump administration set to steamroll CDC on cruise ships, prioritizing foreign corporations over public health, the Friends of the Earth Society says. Okay, these are liberal organizations that are hysterically opposed to cruise lines. They think cruising pollutes the oceans, pollutes the air, kills whales, causes economic devastation to the places that they cruise to, and they have done everything in their power to try to stop cruising in America for many, many years, including, as we relayed to you last week, when the CDC, for some mysterious reason, asked for public comment. I don't think it's so mysterious anymore. I think it's very obvious that CDC is trying to give voice to these liberal organizations, because I think the CDC is very liberal, and anytime they have a liberal organization, they are going to bend over backwards for that liberal organization. So anyway, let's go with the article. Environmental advocacy groups are condemning the news that the U.S. federal government is planning to allow cruise ships to start sailing again in the U.S. waters beginning on November 1st, calling out the Trump administration for choosing to play politics instead of listening to the scientific experts yet again with COVID-19. How can we listen to the scientific experts who have not said a word about what we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to restart cruising? Okay, here's a quote from Kendra Ulrich, who is the shipping campaigns director at Stand.Earth. That the Trump administration intervened on behalf of the cruise companies over the objections of the CDC is a damning indictment of the priorities of this administration and the cruise sector. There is no evidence that happened. That's only a report from Axios News. Cruise ships played a significant role in the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, with new data showing that a third wave of infections is potentially brewing in the U.S. I'd like to see where that data came from. How can you have data that shows that you're going to have a third wave? You don't know that you have a third wave until you have the third wave, and then you have data. I don't know how new data shows that a third wave is potentially, well, yeah, of course, anything is potentially brewing. Now is not the time to sideline the agencies in charge of protecting public health in favor of corporate foreign interest and major campaign donors. The Trump administration is choosing to play politics yet again with COVID-19. You see where this is all going? Okay, here's another one from Marcy Keever, Oceans and Vessels Program Director at Friends of the Earth. The cruise industry's negligent response on COVID-19 created hundreds of new cases, and we're talking millions of cases worldwide. Anyway, and helped spread the virus around the world. The industry should not restart until it's safe for passengers, crew, and communities. But the Trump administration is putting corporate interests over science and public health. Okay, and I think that's where the CDC is coming from. All right, that's where we are. Again, I was hoping to have more good news for you. That's why the title of this week's podcast is Two Steps Backwards, because it seems every time we make a step forward, we get energized, we get positive, we say, okay, here's where we're at. We did it. We came up with what they wanted us to do. We get shut down again. And there's no doubt in my mind that this no sail order will be extended after October 31st. So that's where we're at. Well, let's look at some of the economic impacts all of this is having. I found an article which I think is going to be a portent of things to come. As you know, one of the protocols that's being proposed and looks like it will probably be part of the future of cruising, and that is that your excursions, you're no longer going to be able to take, at least initially, independent vendors' excursions, shore excursions. And so there's going to be a much more large partnership between vendors and cruise lines to basically have, hopefully, to give you more excursions to choose from so that you'll be able to get off the ship and enjoy the ports of call. Obviously, what's not going to happen in the future is you're not going to be able to get off and wander around town and do shopping. That's going to be a further devastating economic impact to these small ports in the Caribbean where these shop owners depend on that. You're going to get on an excursion bus, go to whatever, come back and get on the ship. You're not going to be allowed to, because you may spread the COVID. They may spread it to you. So we're going to have these little bubbles. But American Queen Victory Lines, had their parent corporation is known as Hornblower Group. Again, this is becoming like the American Queen Steamboat Company and Victory Cruise Lines are both cruise lines that cruise exclusively here in the United States. And the Hornblower Group is their overall parent corporation, similar to the way Royal Caribbean is the parent corporation of Celebrity and Azamara and Silversea, etc. Anyway, they announced that they had acquired their day tour partner, Shore Excursions of America, and so they've wrapped that into their corporation. And this will allow them to have more seamless booking, be able to control the excursions better. Now, one of the things that's interesting is the American Queen Steamboat. When you cruise with them, one of the things that makes it so appealing is that in each port of call, they have a bus that follows you. And in the morning, the bus is a hop-on, hop-off bus that takes you on a tour of the little town that you're visiting. Maybe it's Paducah, Kentucky. It could be Chester, Illinois, the home of the inventor of Popeye, and Paducah, Kentucky being the site of the world's quilting museum. But anyway, so you have this hop-on, hop-off bus as a tour in the morning, and in the afternoon you can go back to these different sites. And it's really, really a great way to do this. Now, I don't know if this is going to be able to continue when we can't wander around on our own at these ports of call. but they have very limited excursions, so it looks like they will be moving excursions into this and maybe less of the hop-on, hop-off. But I think this may be a trend where we see cruise lines acquiring different vendors in the short excursion industry to be able to wrap that all together. Another economic impact that got more press this week was on the shipbuilding industry in Europe. The name of this article is Coronavirus Devastates Cruise Shipbuilding, No New Contracts for 5 years. This is an industry that has been seeing phenomenal growth over the last 10 years as massive amounts of ship orders have come in from all the different cruise lines. We have vastly increased our capacity in the cruise industry over the last 5 years. The ships obviously have gotten much larger, and we have been building many, many more of them. The article says, with demand for cruising down to historic lows, operators will not order new cruise ships until at least 2025. There was on the 25th of September, there was a webinar in Europe where the different cruise ship builders were talking about what's going on with their industry. They said the dire situation for the cruise industry and the shipyards building new cruise vessels in what has turned from a long-term surge in demand to a massive slump. They don't expect any new contracts till 2025, and even some of the ones that are already in progress, contracts that have already been signed and started, the deliveries are being delayed. He doesn't think the cruise lines are going to cancel previously signed orders, but there won't be any new ones coming up. Also, with the ships not sailing, there's very little demand for ship repairs. The ship industry in Europe feels like there's going to be a potential increase in demands for ships with reduced carrying capacity. Perhaps there could be a maximum of 2,000 to 2,500 passengers on a ship. I think this is a trend you're going to be seeing. Maybe in the new vessels, there's going to be fewer passengers. There's going to be larger crew quarters, because one of the things they're looking at is each crew member having his own quarters, his own cabin, instead of having 2, 3, 4 that we have now, that we're going to need more room for quarantining people. Again, these are long-term reactions to a short-term problem, but that's, I guess, what we're facing. The Europeans are saying design changes could include increased onboard hospital facilities, isolation areas, and expanded onboard networks for IT applications, so that you have one of the things they're proposing is that you don't go to the infirmary anymore, that you have a telemed conference with the infirmary. And also the things that they're looking at are HVAC changes and filtration in the HVAC system. So those are some of the things that we hope that these shipyards don't close, because they're going to be hard to restart again. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is, if we're going to have smaller ships, you're going to have increased pricing in cruising. So don't think that cruising is going to become this huge bargain, because nobody wants to do it. Speaking of demand, obviously there's been a huge pickup in demand for cruises in America, where you can either drive or you fly short hops to get to the cruise lines. There's a feeling that it's going to be safer to cruise in America than it will be in Europe. We have some magnificent scenery in this country. We have some beautiful rivers, and we have some great cruise lines. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is that we are seeing a big demand in American cruises for 2021. And I urge you not to delay if you're thinking about booking a Mississippi River cruise, a Columbia Snake River cruise, the Cape Cod cruise, Florida Coast cruise, any of these cruises that predominantly are sailing in America. Now is the time to be booking. The major players in this are American Cruise Lines and American Queen Steamboat Company, or the Hornblower Group. Viking will be entering the fray in 2021 also, so with a Mississippi River cruise. Again, if you're considering taking a river cruise in America, I urge you to call us immediately at Cruise Holidays Viera, 321-242-1331. Although we are having reduced office hours right now, we welcome you, if you live in the Melbourne area, to come in, but we request that you make an appointment before you do. And if you call us and we're closed, we do have an excellent answering machine, and we will get right back to you. Also, you can contact us by emailing us through our website at justcruisinviera.com. And there are portals there for you to be able to email us. Tell us what you're looking at, and then we'll get back to you and give you assistance in planning that next cruise. But again, don't delay. American Cruise Line is they're debuting 2 new riverboats and 50 new shore excursions for 2021. The American Melody will be joining the fleet in the summer of 2021, and she's going to be joining the American Jazz along the Mississippi River. And, of course, the Song is out on the Columbia and Snake Rivers. That's where we were scheduled to be in about 10 days from now, but that cruise got canceled. What's new? The CEO of American Cruise Lines, Charles Robertson, said, quote, "The U.S. river cruise outlook for 2021 is tremendous, with strong demand for small ship cruises close to home." And let's see, he says, "We are proud to build the ships we operate at our affiliated shipyard in Salisbury, Maryland, and in adding new small ships and exciting new U.S. itineraries each year." American Cruise Lines will introduce a new 8-day Cape Codder. It'll be a round trip from Boston, which will visit small ports in the New England region and feature an exclusive partnership with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. The cruise line will also debut an 8-day Music Cities cruise from Nashville, U.S. to Memphis, U.S., and an 11-day Alaskan Explorer itinerary departing from Juneau, which will include 2 days in Glacier Bay. 2 days in Glacier Bay. Wow, that is fantastic. That is one of my favorite places in the whole world. Fascinating place, Glacier Bay. You can actually go ashore. Glacier Bay is a national park. You can actually go ashore there. Anyway, normally we just cruise into the glaciers in Alaska, into the fjords. The new itineraries will be accompanied by the introduction of over 50 new shore excursions, which will include activities such as kayaking, hiking, and wildlife watching. New American cruise coaches will follow the cruise line's upper and lower Mississippi River cruises from St. Paul to New Orleans. By the way, if you're thinking of Mississippi River cruises, I highly recommend the upper Mississippi starting in St. Paul. The river is smaller up there, especially doing it during the fall foliage, the trees changing. That is a wonderful cruise. The lower Mississippi, the river is wider, there are more levees, there's a little less to see, but the upper Mississippi, really recommend that. They're also going to be offering things like premium packages, pre-cruise premium packages. Here's an example. One of them is a Graceland package in Memphis that was going to allow you an after-hours visit to Elvis's home, Graceland. So got a lot of things, lots of positive things happening on the American Cruise outlook. Again, they're under suspension. They're pretty much, even though their ships are less than 250 passengers, they're not sailing either, because they're either getting pushbacks from the ports of call because people don't understand, as usual, what's going on. And so it's bad publicity, I guess, if the big ships aren't cruising, that the small ships aren't cruising either. I want to remind you that Cruise Holidays of Viera is owned by myself and my lovely and gracious wife, Linda Jackson. We are 17 years in business. We have been on over 130 cruises. We've been on all of these American cruise lines that I've talked about today. We have great experience in cruising all over the world and here in America also. And we would be glad to lend you that expertise at no additional cost of what you would pay if you book directly with a cruise line. But you get a person, and you get lots of people to help you, along with our wonderful administrative assistant, Wendy. And so when you're thinking about getting out of the bubble, venturing out of your shell, we are going to be here to help you. And that's Cruise Holidays of Viera, 321-242-1331. Well, I think I'll close this week's edition of Just Cruising. We are very glad that you could be with us. Again, I wish I had some more positive and upbeat news for you, but maybe next week I'll have something that'll be something on the horizon, a glimmer of hope that we can look forward to. And as we all look forward to that day when we can get back to traveling and cruising and getting out there and exploring. But until that happens, and until we see you again, keep on cruising.